สิงห์มึงจะเลิกทำงานนี้จริงๆหรือวะ
ลินให้อยากกลับไปอยู่เชียงดาว
รู้ว่าอันตรายแล้วทำไมยังทำอีกอะถ้าสิ่งเป็นอะไรขึ้นมาคิดถึงเราบ้างดิ
ผมมีเรื่องที่อยากจะขอคำแนะนำจากทั้งสองคนหน่อย
แต่เรายังไม่แน่ใจเลยนะคะว่าจะเป็นผลดีกับคนไข้ของเราจริงๆหรือเปล่าพูดดิครับ
เกิดเหตุฉุกเฉินที่โรงพยาบาลประชามิตรถ้าไม่มีเหตุจำเป็นอย่าเข้าไปบริเวณนั้นเป็นอันขาด
ถอยไปลิน
สิ่งได้ยินลินไหมหมอได้ยินชั้น10
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, humanoids from the deep. If you don't understand my greeting, just stick around. All will be explained. How the hell you doing, Mike? I'm doing all right.
I'm doing well. Just trying to survive the heat. It's finally ridiculously hot, but I don't know. Who knows how long it'll last. Hey, what's up, Don? How are you?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right. So, no movie at the theater. So we went through a couple different... Well, actually, no. There was a movie at the theater, the indie one. But it was kind of decided it was more drama than horror, which is accurate because I saw it too. That was Abraham's Son. So we'll probably... I would imagine we'll mention it on the main show as like our in our What We Watch segment. So we had a couple other choices, and we went with the movie on Netflix. Is it Ziam?
Ziam. Yep.
Ziam. All right. And it's the synopsis for that is in a world succumbing to hunger, a Muay Thai fighter fights off zombies to save his beloved. Okay, all right. So this movie, let's see, what am I looking for here? It's a Thai movie, looks like it released out of Thailand on July 9th. So pretty new. And yeah, score on IMDb is not that great, but we'll get into what not our scores, but what our thoughts on it are. Venom, what did you think of Ziam?
Ziam's an interesting film. This film feels like it doesn't really know what it wants to be. Even if you look at the subgenres on IMDb, it says zombie, action, horror, sci-fi, thriller. That's a lot of subgenres to stick into one movie. Ultimately, yes, it is a zombie film. There are very definitely, and they are absolutely zombies, reanimated corpses. They die, they come back to life, blah, blah, blah. The issue with this movie, like I said, is its kind of shift in tone, especially in the third act. My biggest issue with this film is the major tonal change in the third act. Like for the first hour of this movie, for the first two acts, it takes itself very seriously. It's a very gritty, down to earth, though a little over the top with some of its action sequences, but that can be forgiven. Once we get to a catalyst event right at the start of the third act, the movie kind of turns into a cartoon. Like the action sequences are so over the top. They're no longer grounded in reality. And then the ending, I have a major issue with. Now, without giving away too much, I feel like the third act of this movie turns into Kung Fury. I don't know if any of you folks out there or any of my co-hosts have ever seen Kung Fury. It's a 25-minute short that was available like maybe 8 to 10 years ago on YouTube. It is still available now, but it's basically an incredibly over-the-top kung fu action buddy cop type film where, I mean, it's so ridiculous that the main character literally travels back in time to fight the greatest kung fu master in human history. And who is the greatest kung fu master in human history? Adolf fucking Hitler. That just tells you a little bit about the ridiculousness of both Kung Fury and then the last act of Ziam. Like I said, it turns into a completely over-the-top action movie with characters surviving injuries that no human has a right to survive. Overall, performances are fine. I have no major issues with our performances. Both of our leads, our male and female leads, both do really well. I actually care somewhat about them, even though we don't get a whole lot of character development. Their little romance is, kind of like the emotional core of this film, so I'm down for it. Those of you who listen to either of the creature or kaiju podcasts that Don and I have been on know that I hate little kids and kaiju movies. They tend to kind of ruin the story, and we kind of get an element of that here. We get a little kid named Buddy, that's a weird name for a Thai kid, but yeah, that's his actual name. Everybody calls him Buddy, where he's equal parts annoying and making bad decisions, but then equal parts good performances and emotional stuff. Like there's a great emotional scene where Buddy has to say goodbye to someone who's been bitten. And it's probably the most emotional scene in the movie if you're into that kind of thing, which, I tend to like a little bit of drama in my horror. And this movie has exactly that, just a little bit of drama, not a whole lot. Not like Abraham's Boys, which was mainly drama with a little bit of horror in the third act, So overall, I enjoyed this movie. I think it's good, not great. There are some good action sequences. I kind of look at this movie as if the creators of The Raid or The Night Comes for Us made a zombie movie, it would look like this. I thought about calling this chat John Wick versus zombies, but then I realized that Tony Jaa, big action star from the 2000s, is a Thai actor. So I went with Tony Jaa versus zombies because it almost seems like the makers of this film wanted to pay homage to their countryman, Tony Jaa, and some of the great action movies that he's done over the last 20, 25 years. And then I'm sitting there thinking, well, why not just get Tony Jaa? Like maybe I might have accepted it a little bit more if they actually got him for the movie. Granted, the man's got to be in his late 40s, early 50s by now. I'm not sure his exact age, but I would imagine high octane action movies might not be on his radar anymore. But for whatever it's worth,
he did one earlier this year, actually.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah. God, it was for life of me. I think it's called Raging Fire. I can look it up, but I saw it earlier this year for one of the companies that I do reviews for. It was actually really good and far better than I thought.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Tony Jaa. I've never seen a Tony Jaa movie I don't like. In fact, The Protector is literally one of my favorite martial arts movies ever. I adore that film.
Yeah, it's in my top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the tone definitely, it feels kind of Tony Jaa. What was up, Don? I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying I found it. It's called Striking Rescue. I knew
Striking Rescue from earlier this year, you said?
Yeah, it says 2024, but all of the release dates are going to be 2025 access for America.
Nice. I'll look it up. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, the Ziam, the movie that we're talking about today, it has some tonal dichotomy throughout. It doesn't really know if it wants to be an action movie, a kung fu movie, or a gritty zombie movie. I will say I haven't even really spoken about the zombies yet. I actually do like the zombies in this one. I like that they kind of mutate. I'll leave it at that for now. There is a specific explanation for their mutation. But I kind of like how they first are just your traditional zombies. Yes, they are runners. They're not the shamblers. But like I said, when we get our very first zombie scene, the character is actually hooked up to a heart monitor. And this is the first time I've ever seen a heart monitor hooked up to someone being reanimated. And I loved when we get to the walkthrough, I'll talk about why I love that scene and why I even like the accuracy of the heart monitor, which we'll get to later on. But yeah, there are a lot of scenes in here that I do like. There is when the hospital first gets sieged by zombies, there's a great montage where the camera is actually passing through the walls of the hospital, showing different areas of the hospital being, overrun by zombies. And that whole montage I thought was really, really well done. There's multiple great sequences in here, but like I said, the tonal change might be a little much for people, or just the focus of the film. Like, is this a zombie movie? Is this an action movie? Is it a kung fu movie? Like, what do you want to go? If you can accept all the different subgenres, which, on this show, I think we do a really good job of it. I mean, I praise Satan's Slaves constantly because of its usage of different types of antagonists in the film. So the fact that a movie kind of mixes genres shouldn't be necessarily a negative, but in this one, it kind of left me scratching my head, especially because, like I said, for the first hour, it's very serious. It takes itself very seriously. It's grounded in reality. And then for that last half hour, it's just a cartoon. It's just an absolute cartoon. And if you're into that, that's awesome. Like, if the whole movie would have been like the last half hour, I would be praising this movie. It might even be one of my favorite movies of the year. If the whole movie was like the last half hour, but when you set up the first hour, it's kind of like Malignant, where for the first hour of Malignant, it sets up this kind of dark haunted house story. And then, of course, we get the reveal of, what happens. I'll leave it ambiguous for anybody who maybe hasn't seen Malignant yet, but then it turns into just like this movie, it kind of turns into a high octane action movie once we get that reveal. So if that's the kind of thing that you can accept, then I think you're going to be on board for this movie. The gore is there. I'm not going to say that this is an ultra gory movie. Yes, there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of bites. There's a lot of cool looking zombies, but not a whole lot of like body parts flying around. I think we get one heart ripped out, but for the most part, that's probably the goriest thing that really happens in the film. But like I said, the focus of the film is definitely more Singh and his girlfriend, Dr. Rin, and kind of their escape out of this hospital, or their attempt to escape from this hospital before the military blows it up to try to contain the zombie apocalypse that's kind of started, the zombie outbreak that kind of started at this hospital. So like I said, overall, I enjoyed the movie. I watched it twice this weekend. I definitely wouldn't have watched it a second time if I didn't think I would enjoy that second watch. I think I actually like the second watch a little bit more than the first one, because when you know that the movie is going to be all over the place tonally, you kind of accept it a little bit more on that second watch. So yeah, I'm going to say that overall, Ziam is a good, not great, kind of bordering on great. But like I said, it needs to be a little bit more focused, either lean more towards the action or lean more towards the horror of the zombie apocalypse, whatever the case may be. But overall, yes, I did enjoy this movie, and I would recommend it. It's on Netflix, so if you have a Netflix subscription or access to one, it's not going to cost you anything. It's an hour and 35 minutes long, so it's a quick watch. There's no pacing issues, decent score. Cinematography and editing, direction, those are all fine. They're serviceable. Nothing as far as the filmmaking aspects of it, not too much is ultra exceptional, but it's all solid. So yeah, I would recommend this. So yeah, check it out on Netflix if you get a chance. And that's it for general thoughts for me.
All right, Don, what are your thoughts on Ziam?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. For those that know, I am very, very, very much on board with zombie horror, and this is absolutely one of my favorite attempts at this style. Much like the last attempt that Thailand did with zombie films called Operation Undead, which was released earlier this year. This one was just an absolute blast. I am a huge, martial arts fan as well. It's kind of what got me into the genre in a lot of points. So, the inclusion of that is very, very, very welcomed. Even some of the sequences involving the kid, I didn't mind. I know Venom said that he kind of got a little annoying in points just because his decision making wasn't all that there, but I kind of attributed it more to, the chaos of the situation, the shock, the sadness. You're not thinking clearly. I can see why some may not like it, but I was fine with it. But yeah, in most regards, I had an absolute blast with this. Martial arts and kung fu and zombies, yeah, that's right up my alley. Um, I can see where the tonal issues come from. I I don't see that as a major issue, but I do see that as something that can throw people, just like you said, because it does kind of come out of nowhere, and it does kind of seem like it did. It is from another type of film entirely. I'm not that bothered by it. It's just more action for me to enjoy, so I'm okay with it. Um, I do like the zombies. I think that they're the horde mentality is achieved rather well. We do get some great swarming scenes. The initial overrun of the hospital, the way that they take over the hallways and just start ripping people to pieces. That's all fun. Not necessarily in terms of depravity, but in terms of execution. It is very reminiscent of the sadness. The final act in there, which also takes place in a hospital, it kind of has like a similar touch to it. No eyeball fucking, but again, not the level of depravity featured. But yeah, I had an absolute blast with this. I can see where some that are not on board with the tonal shifts, or who are not necessarily zombie fans or martial arts fans. I can see where this would kind of fall flat for them. But yeah, for me, I absolutely love this. This was an absolute blast. This is an absolute top 10 of the year for me. I loved it quite a bit. So yeah, there's not a whole lot here. The one issue I do have with this, and it's more kind of a storyline thing that just makes no sense why anyone in the real world would do this, which would be the rescue operation for the guy's wife. Like in that situation, in that scenario, you're just sending bodies in to be slaughtered, and you're doing it so late into the movie that it makes no sense why you would attempt an extraction at that point. Like the hospital's overrun, there's way too many casualties taking place. You're sending in a covert operation to rescue somebody at that stage. It just feels really bizarre why you'd include it. But that aside, I don't have many specifics against the film. Tons of blood, tons of gore, great zombies, fun martial arts scenes. It's not, again, it's not, Enter the Dragon, or it's not Police Story, but they're serviceable for what they are. They're hard hitting, they're fun. Muay Thai looks great on camera, so I'm really glad that it gets included. So yeah, I don't have too many issues with this. Again, for me, it's a top 10 of the year. We'll see where it stands at the end of the year, but I'm definitely glad we gave this one a shot, and I knew we would have a lot of fun with it. So yeah, at the risk of saying anything else, I guess back to you, Mike.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with Don. Despite any negative things I might say about this movie, the movie is fun as hell. So I'll give it that.
Okay. I I like the design of the zombies, but other than that, I didn't really like it that much. I'm not really into action horror. Um with few exceptions, but I just don't find that I didn't find the horror in it. I mean it's just it's rapid pace as soon as the action starts, so it takes away any horror for me, any tension. Um, when a dude's just doing karate on zombies, not not good to me. I thought it was like a middle of the road movie at best, and I've I've seen similar movies. Most have done it better, I guess, but it's just not for me. Um, I I did like the setting. I think the hospital setting was good as a setup. because it did kind of remind me of like The Raid with the claustrophobic setting, but to me that just gets wasted. And yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. It's just not the kind of movie for me, and I just found myself kind of bored with it. So but that's just how I feel about action horror. I don't like most action horror, so, and that's what this is. I mean, it's definitely an action horror movie. I didn't really mind the tonal change at the end because I just thought the tone from the beginning was just kind of too over the top for what I like in horror. The story wasn't strong enough to like really make up for that in this case. But yeah, I think it's an entertaining movie in the sense that like if you like action horror, it does enough. So for the people that like those types of movies, I would still say watch it. It's 90 minutes. It's easy to get through. The zombies are designed well. I do think there's like some good individual like deaths and carnage in it. I just, other than that though, I didn't really find the movie that interesting. So yeah, I guess that's it for me.
Well, color me surprised, folks, because for those who don't know, Mike and myself are big UFC and combat sports fans. I honestly thought Mike watching a Muay Thai fighter go through a zombie apocalypse might be a little bit more entertaining to him, but I guess I was wrong. So, but I mean, like I said, for me, I like the action. I've complained about the tone a little bit, and I don't necessarily have a problem overall with action horror films. For the most part, if they're well done, I'm fine with it. Usually action horror has a lot more comedy involved, whereas this movie has like nothing funny about it. There's very little attempts at levity in this movie in any way, shape, or form. And I think maybe that's going to lose some people, because in a lot of action horror films, you get like the comic relief character or a situation that just ends up being kind of funny, whatever the case may be. I mean, hell, even The Thing had, a mildly comedic scene in there. So it's one of those things where maybe that might affect some people's enjoyment of it. Like I said, it takes itself very seriously for the first hour. And even though the movie is still kind of taking itself seriously in the last act, it's just that some of the things that we're seeing, some of the injuries that our main character is getting up from, just it becomes like if he was a Terminator, maybe it would have made a little bit more sense to me. But just being, a human Muay Thai fighter and some of the things that he was able to get up from, it takes you out of the movie. I mean, there's one scene, there's an explosion. I'm just going to say that there's an explosion, and he basically just crawls out of the wreckage. And I'm sitting there scratching my head like, what? Like, how does that make sense? Not only crawls out of the wreckage, but with not even a scratch on him. So yeah, it's just one of those things where, like I said, the movie felt at times like it was a cartoon where, they were just doing over the top set pieces, which, like I said, if the whole movie was like that, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more. I'd be right there with Don saying that it's like a top 10 candidate for the year. Absolutely. But you give us a fairly solid, grounded, gritty movie for the first hour, and then the last half hour, it's just over the top silliness. That's incorrect. I don't want to say silliness, because there is some cool shit in the third act. Despite me saying that it goes very over the top, there is absolutely some great stuff. There is a fight sequence in the third act between two human characters that's equal parts frustrating and fucking awesome. Like, it's a great fight. But when you think about the context of the fight in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, it's like, what the fuck are you two doing? There's more important shit to do right now than beat the shit out of each other, even though it was a great fight.
Kind of ties into my point, but I mean, again, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I agree with you. So yeah, but it is, like I said, I won't deny that it's a fun movie. Whether this ends up being a top 10 for me or not by the end of the year, it is a fun time. Like I said, I did watch it twice. So just the mere fact that I gave it a second watch means that I at least partially enjoyed that first watch. And on second watch, I was able to appreciate a little bit more of the kills, a little bit more of the zombie mutations. I even understood the story a little bit more on the first watch. I missed a rather vital piece of information. I might have been writing down notes. I might have been like looking down at my notebook and writing down notes. And obviously, when you're watching a foreign film with subtitles, when you look down to write down a note, you might miss a line. I don't know Thai, obviously, so I had missed a little bit of a plot point, but then on the second watch, I got the plot point, and it's like, that makes sense, and I actually kind of like it. So I am glad I gave it a second watch for whatever it's worth. But yeah, like I said, if you're a fan of martial arts action, if you're a fan of, horde zombie / horde films, running zombies, lots of zombies to have to deal with. It is nice that it's an isolated location though, because we don't get scenes like 28 years later where there's like hundreds of zombies chasing someone. It's isolated within a hospital. Early on in the film, they tell us that the hospital has approximately 500 people in it. There's still a lot of survivors all through the film. It's not like during that hospital siege early on, every human is taken out except main characters. No, we see human characters running around the hospital throughout the entirety of the film. Obviously, as the movie goes along, we see less and less of them. Duh. But then, of course, towards the end of the movie, then the military makes an appearance, and they got to gum up the works too. So you got to add that conflict wherever you can. So, like I said, it in my personal opinion, it is a mildly flawed film, only mildly. It is a solidly fun film. Like I said, you like action, you like zombies. There's no reason you shouldn't like this. You like Tony Jaa, you like The Raid, then Ziam should be right on your radar. I also do. I don't know how I feel about the use of the letter Z in everything involving zombies now. For those who don't know, this movie takes place in Siam, Thailand. Siam spelled S-I-A-M. But of course, our movie's called Ziam, so they replaced the S with a Z to imply that it's a zombie movie. Remember when we were kids and X was the cool letter? Now Z is the cool letter. Kind of interesting, but yeah, there you go. All right, folks. So if my co-hosts don't have anything else that they want to add, and it doesn't sound like they really did, let's go ahead and get into our walkthrough. It's going to be a fairly quick walkthrough because there's going to be a lot of action set pieces that I'm just going to skip over. And I'm just going to go over the major plot points. But ultimately, the major plot points of this movie could have been done in an anthology segment, like a 20-25 minute long segment. But, this will be a quick one. So let's get into it. Our movie opens up with a newsreel that lets us know that because of global warming, polar ice caps have been melting. Inside of those polar ice caps is ancient bacteria that has been dormant for millions of years. And obviously, we are unprepared for these bacteria today. As it turns out, the bacteria ends up killing all of the fish in the ocean, and then in turn ends up killing all of the animals on the land. So there ends up being a food shortage. So before we even get to any kind of zombies or zombie apocalypse, this world is already in an apocalypse from a food shortage. Now, early in the film, we're introduced to Mr. Vazu. Mr. Vazu is basically a company head, and he has basically done what they did in Snowpiercer. If you guys remember back in Snowpiercer, the train movie, how there was no food in that world, so they just basically processed crickets and whatever insects they can get their hands on. Same thing here in Ziam. Basically, Mr. Vazu figured out a way to utilize all the insects, in Thailand, the roaches and the crickets and whatever little buggies, creepies and crawlies they can get their hands on. They harvest them, they process them, and they turn them into bars, the little like protein bars, if you will. And he basically saves the country of Thailand at their worst time. Like I said, major food shortages, because of the global warming and the bacteria thing. And Mr. Vazu comes in and kind of saves Thailand. So that might actually answer Don's question earlier about why the extraction team went in so late to get Mr. Vazu, because he's basically a god in this world. He saved Thailand from, basically starvation. So I guess they're repaying, some, sense of gratitude by extracting him and his wife. I'm totally in agreement with Don that it seems dumb to do it that late, especially what's planted inside of the hospital, which we haven't even talked about yet. So yeah, it does seem like an odd decision, but I think the justification is just that Mr. Vasu kind of saved Thailand from starvation. So they're repaying him. So anyway, we also early on we meet Singh. Singh is a young man, good looking guy. In this world, in this kind of apocalyptic world, it's not quite a zombie apocalypse necessarily. Like there's still commerce and trade, but like electricity is turned off at 8 p.m. There's no, obviously, like I said, with the food shortages, people are just kind of eating insects, and it's a very violent time, thugs and, people robbing each other for whatever resources they can get, blah, blah, blah. What we find out is that Mr. Vasu discovered a fish, a form of fish that somehow didn't die from the bacteria in the ocean. And what's his first idea? Let's fucking eat it. I don't know. It seems to me that if this fish was tough enough to survive this ancient bacteria, maybe we shouldn't eat it. But they decide to go ahead and start transporting the fish to a processing plant where it will be turned into edible food. And that's where we meet Singh and his partner. I don't know that we ever get the name of the partner because he's only in this one scene. But basically, they're delivery drivers, and they're delivering this fish to a processing plant so that it can be turned into food. Like I said, in the process of delivering this stuff, they are, of course, they kind of drive into a trap where we see a bunch of thugs who are going to rob the truck. It looks like they've done this before. Like they've got a spot set up and they've got hiding spots and everything. Unfortunately, what these thugs don't know is that Singh is a badass Muay Thai fighter. So as soon as they try to attack the truck and try to get the drivers out, Singh turns into goddamn Jean-Claude Van Damme as a Terminator and just wrecks these guys. I mean, he is cracking skulls left and right. I call him a Tony Jaa clone because he uses elbows and knees a lot. Those of you who are fans of Tony Jaa knows that he uses elbows and knees to beautiful proficiency in all of his movies, and that's exactly what Singh does here. He loves his elbows and knees. So he basically dispatches this whole gang. It's probably about 10 to 12 guys that he basically by himself takes out, while the driver, the other guy, his partner, is just kind of making sure that the stock in the back of the truck doesn't get taken or whatever. Eventually, they get to their destination, but during the robbery attempt, one of the crates got damaged, and the buyer doesn't want the damaged crate. I don't know why a damaged crate would affect the food inside, but there you go. So he basically pays Singh and his partner for the delivery that they did make, but he basically refuses to take the broken crate. They end up, Singh and his partner end up opening the crate to see what's inside. They see that it's a fish. They decide to split the fish in half and just keep it. And at one point, the guy says, "Hey, we haven't had a real meal in over 10 years. So fuck it. Let's keep this fish and take it home and eat it." But the fish, my God, this fish looks, and this kind of leads back to my humanoids from the deep comment earlier. These fish look like the fish form of the humanoids from the deep, the creatures from that movie. And then when the zombies start to mutate, they actually start to look like the humanoids from the deep in that movie. So I know I'm digging deep for old ass movies, but I mean, if you know, you know. So there you go. All right, so where are we? After Singh makes his delivery, he goes home. This is when we're introduced to his girlfriend, Dr. Rin. She obviously is very unhappy with his career choice. Obviously, in this world, there's not a whole lot of choices for careers, but Singh, being a badass Muay Thai fighter, figures, I can do these deliveries and, pretty much guarantee that they'll get to their destination. So that's what he does. Dr. Rin, his girlfriend, obviously doesn't like it. She wants him to quit. In fact, she wants them to leave Siam altogether. She wants to go back to the village where they met. They met in a small village outside of Bangkok. I forgot the name of the village, but and then together they moved to the big city to, find careers and whatnot. And obviously the girl, she became a doctor, so good on her, but it didn't look like Singh really did much more than, deliveries and Muay Thai fighting. Not that we ever see him actually Muay Thai fight in the movie. Like I said, the apocalypse has already started when the movie starts, so we don't get to see what the world was like before. All right, so at this point, we've met the major players. So now Dr. Rin goes to work. She gets a military escort to go to work, obviously, because of all the crap that's going on in the world and potentially dangerous humans, blah, blah, blah. When she gets to work, basically, right after she gets to work, we see a scene where some of Mr. Vazu's men are a meeting. They're having a meeting. Mr. Vazu isn't there. Mr. Vazu's at the hospital with his wife, who's terminally ill. But we see his guys at like a dinner party, and they introduce the fish that they think is going to save the world, reintroducing, fish into our diets. Basically, we see the main guy at the dinner party, like sitting at the head of the table. He takes a bite of the fish, he chews it. It seems like it's pretty good, tasty, blah, blah, blah. Then everybody else at the table follows suit and starts eating. But then within a minute, the first guy that started eating the fish, he starts throwing up blood. He falls out of his chair and he starts convulsing violently. I can only assume that the rest of the guys in that dinner table pretty much, started doing the exact same thing after the camera cut. Then we cut to the hospital where that person, the first guy who ate the fish, is brought to the hospital. We see him being brought into an emergency room. He's hooked up to a heart monitor. And like I said, I like this scene a lot because if you look at the heart monitor, like most heart monitors, they don't just monitor your heart rate. They monitor your blood pressure, your oxygen saturation. There's multiple values on the heart monitor. So they're trying to save this guy. He's convulsing, throwing up blood. Eventually, he does die. His heart stops. And, we see the heart monitor go flatline. And the doctors all leave the room except for one nurse who's kind of just closing things up. Suddenly, his heart starts beating again, but that's the only value that shows up on the screen. So he has no blood pressure, no oxygen saturation, and I'm not sure what the other numbers on the heart monitor kind of jive with. But the only number that shows up is the heart rate. So I kind of like that. It shows that these zombies don't have any bodily functions except for their heart is beating. So I thought that was pretty cool. And obviously, as soon as that zombie wakes up, which at this point we're at the 23-minute mark of the movie. So I always like to write down when we see our first bit of horror in a film. So hour and 35-minute movie, at the 23-minute mark, we get our first zombie. But my friends, as soon as we get that first zombie, the shit hits the fan. Like he attacks the nurse. The nurse ends up getting, turned. The virus turns people quick. They are definitely dying and then reanimating, but it takes like a minute maybe at most. So, of course, this is where the siege starts. And this is where we get that great montage of the camera kind of moving through the walls of the hospital, going floor to floor and hallway to hallway, showing how the hospital's breaking down. Zombies are attacking people, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, Dr. Rin is caught in the middle of it. She ends up getting caught with her boss. Unfortunately, her boss gets bitten. And he ends up changing while he's in the room with her. She does end up escaping. Now, while all this is happening, news reports are coming up on the radio talking about some major situation that's happening at the hospital. And obviously, Singh hears the report, realizes that the love of his life is at the hospital and there's something going on. So despite the news reports saying, do not go to the hospital, stay in your homes, he, of course, goes to the hospital. When he gets to the hospital, he sees a military, perimeter, like they've got a perimeter around the hospital, and they're not letting people, or at first when Singh first gets to the hospital, they are letting people out of the hospital, like as people are declared okay and they've recovered from their injuries, they're being released from the hospital, and the military is actually letting them out. But then at one point, literally as Singh is walking towards the front door of the hospital, a body falls down from somewhere up above. We don't see where it came from, but because, the camera's solidly on the ground with us, and the body just kind of falls down. As we find out, it's actually two bodies. It's a doctor and one of the military guys. Apparently, the doctor was turned, and she then attacked the military guy. They went out a window and fell down, Lord knows how far. Unfortunately, of course, she's a zombie, so she's not going to die because of a great fall. So the zombie starts kind of moving and wiggling, and then basically at that point, again, the shit hits the fan at the hospital. At that point, the military says, all right, that's it. We're not letting anyone out. Everyone get back into the hospital. Like, there's a crowd of people outside the hospital who are trying to leave. But at that point, once that body falls to the ground and then gets back up and attacks one of the military guys, obviously they tell everybody get back in the hospital. People start resisting. They try to leave anyway, and the military just opens fire. It's very 28 weeks later. They just fucking open fire until everybody gets back in the hospital. So obviously this virus that's affecting people is isolated to this hospital. So the military is trying to keep it in here. We see multiple military meetings where the higher ups are trying to decide what to do. They eventually decide they're just going to blow up the hospital. So they send in a military team to actually set up charges. And we see that they've got charges set up all through the hospital. More set pieces happen. Rin, is trying to traverse the hospital. Singh trying to get to Rin. We get Buddy, our mildly annoying kid. I say very mildly because I'm kind of exaggerating. He's actually not that bad. He's definitely not as bad as little Hitler from Jan Gary, not by any stretch. But he's he does make some kind of poor decisions, especially because the reason I understand what Don's point was, that he's a kid and he might be in shock, but what bothers me is the inconsistency of it. Like, this kid is the one who actually tells Singh, you got to attack him in the head. You got to kill the brain. The brain controls everything. Like, this kid was savvy enough to know what Singh needed to do. But then later on, when Buddy's own mother ends up getting bitten by one of the zombies, he can't bring himself to leave her. And it's like, again, he's a kid and I have to be forgiving of that. So, but it just, he was almost an adult early in the film, when he was telling Singh, you got to destroy the brain. It's like no one else in the movie knew that you had to destroy the brain except for this little fucking kid. So go figure. But anyway, I digress. Eventually, Rin and Singh do find each other. Unfortunately, Buddy's mother, like I said, she's bitten. She ends up getting, turning into a zombie. And one thing I gotta say, man, this movie is ruthless. Earlier in the film, we see a military guy shoot a little girl. And when I say little girl, I mean legitimately little girl, like 5 or 6 years old. She's walking around looking for her mother. And then she walks out of the front door of the hospital, not realizing that there's a quarantine, but she's just kind of yelling for her mother, Mom, where are you? We hear the military guys over the megaphone yelling, get back in the hospital, or we will open fire. And then some good Samaritan comes out and tries to protect the girl. He comes out, he gets in front of the girl, he puts his hands up and he says, please don't shoot. And what does the military shoot? Or what do? They shoot. As soon as the guy says, please don't shoot, they shoot him dead. And then when he falls, we see the little girl standing unprotected and we hear a single shot ring out. We hear the bullet hit the child and we don't actually see like the impact or anything like that. It's more implied than actually shown on screen, but it's pretty impactful, I gotta say. And then in this scene that we're up to now, where Buddy's mother turns into a zombie, we see her feeding on fucking newborn babies. Holy shit. When Don said this movie has elements of the sadness in it, he was not exaggerating, my friends. Definitely no skull fuckery, but goddamn, eating babies and shooting little girls. Yeah, this movie does not pull any punches. Obviously, I wish my personal gore hound ass wishes that they would have been a little bit more on screen with those kills. But I also understand why they kind of, shot him the way that they shot him. Like, we don't actually see Buddy's mother bite into a child, but we see her from behind grab a newborn baby, and then we see her kind of bend down, bite into something, and then we see the blood splurt kind of hit the wall. But I mean, that's enough to know what's going on. She's eating newborn babies. So I'll give the movie credit where credit is due, definitely. All right, so eventually, like Don said earlier, the military decides we need to extract Mr. Vazu and his wife. The problem is that the charges that were set in the building are now at 30 minutes. They only have 30 minutes left. So the military has to get in and out and take off within 30 minutes. Obviously, the shit hits the fan. Mr. Vazu's wife ends up coming to, and her eyes are completely black, but this idiot somehow is like, oh, look, my wife is awake. Yeah, she's awake and she looks like a fucking demon. Are you not looking at her? I understand love is blind, my friends, but let me tell you something. If Mrs. Venom ever comes at me with black eyes and sharp teeth, I'll be the first one to cut her fucking head off. I am not going to be that character in a horror movie that can't kill a loved one. In fact, Mrs. Venom and I have already had this conversation where we've already said, if one of us ever becomes a zombie or a monster, we will not hesitate in taking out the other person. So yeah, that's love right there, my friends. Find yourself a wife that'll watch horror movies with you. Trust me, it's awesome. Anyway. All right, back to the movie. So, unfortunately, when the military is in the hospital trying to extract Mr. Vazu and his wife, they're basically killing everybody. Human, zombie, it doesn't matter. If you're not Mr. Vazu or his wife, they're shooting you unmercifully. And unfortunately, that's what happens. Singh, Dr. Rin and Buddy end up walking out of a room, and literally a single shot rings out. Blood sprays all over Dr. Rin's face. And then the camera pans over to show that Singh has just been shot in what looks like the heart. Now, obviously, he wasn't shot in the heart, because there's no first aid for that, my friends. If a bullet goes through your heart, you're fucking dead. Just, come to peace with it. So obviously the bullet must have missed his heart. Maybe it went a little above, like between the shoulder blade and the heart, whatever the case may be. The point being, Singh, and this, my friends, is the turning point for the movie. This is literally where I feel like the movie turns into a cartoon. Singh gets shot in the chest and within a minute gets up and has a high octane fight with one of the military guys, like the main military guy. And then this is the fight that I referenced earlier, where it's like, what the fuck is going on? We're in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. People are getting torn into pieces left and right. And here's Singh and this military douchebag fighting to the death. It's just like, what the fuck? Like, the priorities are so fucked up here, but again, it's probably more realistic than I want to give it credit for. So whatever. Eventually, Singh does get the upper hand on the military trooper who he's fighting, and eventually the trooper gets attacked by a couple of zombies and gets turned himself. Singh ends up passing out from both getting shot and then that big fight that he had with this guy, which was an impressive fight. Like I said, I don't want to take anything away from it. It's a very well choreographed fight. It's pretty awesome. Very reminiscent of something you would have seen in The Raid, or in most Tony Jaa movies for that matter. So, let's see. Dr. Rin ends up getting the bullet out of his shoulder, patching up the wound, giving him a little time to rest, and then he wakes up. And then we have a little bit of an out of place emotional scene where, basically Dr. Rin and Singh kind of have it out as far as like why she doesn't like him having that job of his, because she's worried that he's going to get killed on one of those deliveries and it's going to leave her alone in a big city that it doesn't seem like she really wanted to be in to begin with, because she's the one who's always talking about going back to her hometown. She very obviously wants to go back to her village and live a peaceful life in this fucked up world that they now live in. So eventually Singh does recover his strength. They're able to get up and leave. But of course, more issues. We end up our three survivors end up getting separated. Buddy and Dr. Rin end up running in their own direction to get to the roof, because on the roof is a helicopter, the military helicopter that's waiting to extract Mr. Vazu. Unfortunately, Mr. Vazu and his wife are all dead, and all of the military guys, the entire platoon that they sent in there to extract Mr. Vazu, all dead. But eventually, Dr. Rin and Buddy end up getting to the roof before Singh. The military, that guy that's there keeping guard, checks them to make sure that they're not bitten or scratched or anything. Once he's convinced that they're safe, he tells them to get into the helicopter. Of course, they don't want him to leave yet because Singh is still inside. And what is Singh doing? Singh is reproducing the battery. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the zombie film, The Battery, but there's a scene in that movie where our two protagonists are inside of a car and it's surrounded by zombies, but they're just sitting there kind of having a normal conversation, like they're not in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. This scene, even though Singh is by himself, and the zombies are actually much stronger in this movie, so they're actually able to break the windows and kind of start getting into the car. Eventually, the car gets completely covered in zombies. We see the camera pan back and the fucking car explodes. Literally, the car, for no rhyme or reason. It's not like Singh had a hand grenade on him. It's not like he set off the gas tank or he didn't do anything. He was just in there. And literally the car just explodes. After the explosion settles, we see dead zombies all over the place. And then what do we see coming out of the wreckage? Of course, Singh crawls his way out of the wreckage without a fucking scratch on him. Folks, he was inside of a car that exploded. The explosion killed all the zombies outside of the car, but the one guy inside is alive? No, fuck you. I'm not going to believe that. Obviously, it's a minor gripe. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If the whole movie was as over the top as the third act, I would have been a lot more on board for the tone, and I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But like I said, he crawls out of the wreckage. Then he goes to try to catch up to Rin and Buddy, who are already in the military helicopter waiting for extraction. Eventually, either the pilot or the other military guy gets a message saying that, or they know that the charges are about to go off. That's what it is. They know that the charges are going to go off like in a minute. So they're like, that's it. We have to leave. And literally, as the helicopter lifts off the ground, in comes Singh, and he's literally just standing there staring up into the sky as the helicopter takes off. Then we see in the background the rooftop door open, and we see zombies start pouring out. It almost looks like Singh is just gonna, kind of sit there and just accept his fate. But then he lifts up his right hand, and we see that he's holding a bone saw, an actual fucking bone saw from the hospital. And he starts just decimating these zombies as they come to attack him. Like I said, Muay Thai fighter, and now he's got a bone saw as a weapon, and he is just wrecking zombies. But unfortunately, as we see the timer run out, the explosives do go off. The hospital is demolished. It literally comes crumbling down. It's like a World Trade Center type thing. Like the whole thing, it was a tall building, and then it's just a pile of rubble when the explosion is over. After the explosion, we see that Dr. Rin and Buddy have gone back to Dr. Rin's village. Obviously, with Buddy's mother gone, Dr. Rin is basically, will start taking care of Buddy, like it's like Buddy is her own. So they're there. We see that Buddy is there. They're safe. They're happy. And then the movie ends and the credits start rolling. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's a pretty decent ending. Well, no, they got to tack on one extra ending that just really, really annoys the shit out of me. After the fucking hospital exploded and turned into a pile of fucking rubble, out comes Singh from the fucking, I don't know what he was hiding inside of. He somehow found some metal contraption that I don't know if it was like the inside of an MRI machine or something, but he basically, it turns out, which, like I said, We saw that he was standing on the rooftop when the charges went off. How the hell he was able to get himself into this thing is beyond me. But yeah, he walks out of this metal pod that he was hiding in. And he looks at the camera, showing us that once again, he doesn't even have a fucking scratch on him. And then he just kind of looks into the camera, gives a silly little smirk, and that's the end of our film, folks. That is Ziam 2025. Like I said, for the first hour, it very much takes itself seriously as a very gritty, down-to-earth zombie, apocalypse film. And then for the last half hour, it turns into Kung Fury. And mind you, I don't hate that necessarily. Like I am the kind of person that will complain when certain tonal changes don't make sense to me. This one doesn't necessarily not make sense. It's a very over the top one. And like I said, once Singh gets up from getting shot near the heart, it's like, what? Is he a fucking robot? And then the rest of the movie is all just crazy over the top action sequences. Singh surviving every injury that would kill a normal human being. And then, of course, we get that mid-credit scene showing that he did survive the hospital explosion. I guess that's a happy ending for somebody. It's not for me, because like I said, if they would have just ended it at the village showing that Buddy and Dr. Rin were safe, I would have been much happier. Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to set up a franchise, which fine, I guess, but I just don't think you needed that extra. I mean, you could have brought Singh back for a sequel and not had that little stinger at the end, that mid-credits little scene. So, just a minor gripe from me. But yeah, like I said, overall, a fun movie. If you're into action movies, if you're into zombie movies, I would say I would recommend this one to you. It's on Netflix, so check it out. It's only 95 minutes long, so it's a quick watch. And I think that's all I got. So back to you, Mike.
Okay. What else we got out for people to listen to?
All right. So just yesterday, we recorded No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts episode 40. On that episode, we took a look at the classic 1957 creature feature, The Black Scorpion, a movie that I feel is very underappreciated, and you'll hear me talk about it at length on the episode. Like I said, we just recorded it yesterday, so I wouldn't look for it available until maybe next week sometime. I should have it. Unfortunately, Mrs. Venom is on vacation this week, and we have plans to spend some time together, so I'm not going to get around to editing the latest episode of Creature Comforts right away, but I will definitely make sure it's out before the end of the month because it is officially our July episode. So look out for that. Nothing new on the Crystal Lake gift shop front. Still trying to plan our 10th episode of that, which will, of course, look at season 1, episode 10 of Friday the 13th, the series. And that show, of course, stars myself, Mike Merriman, and the lovely Lacey Liu from Cut to the Chase and the Slumber Party Massacre podcast. So check that out when it's available. And check out the first 9 episodes if you are a fan of the Friday the 13th TV series, which ran from 1987 to 1990 on syndicated television. So if you were a fan of that, check out that show. And that's about it. No guest spots to speak of. And I'll let Mike talk about the main show and any other plans that we might have. So that's it for me.
All right. What about you, Don?
Yeah. As mentioned, the latest Creature Comforts was recorded. I'm in the final stages of deciding what the pick is since I'm up next. So I'll let the guys know about that sooner rather than later. Only other thing to mention is sometime before the world ends, there should be the podcast versions of roundtables that I recorded throughout the year. Still no word on those, but hopefully they'll be out before we all turn to dust. So yeah, I guess back to you.
All right. The latest episode of the main show is up on YouTube. Number 68. We talked Peeping Tom and kind of like the aftermath for what it meant for the director's career and kind of did a compare contrast with Psycho, although we did not do like a main review of Psycho. So that's up. Yeah, it's up on YouTube now. Hopefully, it'll be up on the network by the time you're hearing this. And that's really it for me. Our next episode of this is
Back to
probably
the
gonna
theater.
be I Know What You Did Last Summer.
I know what shitty movie you watched last summer. Yep.
Yeah, I have little desire to see it, but I will since it's in the theater. But
I'm not even that big a fan of the franchise. Like the first one is tolerable. Like I won't even say that I like the first one. I can tolerate it. It's decent. Jennifer Love Hewitt's not hard to look at, so it makes the movie watchable. But overall, like I said, those 90s slashers just really aren't my thing. You know, the Scream clones that all came out after 96. So I'm not excited for the new one. Obviously, I'll watch it. I'll keep an open mind. Maybe it'll surprise me. Maybe it'll be the best of the franchise. Obviously, that's what I'm hoping for. But yeah, that'll be the next episode of Fresh Cuts, unfortunately.
Yay.
all right, well, that said, we're getting out of here, so we'll be back next week, probably with that movie. So I guess let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
Hey, at least the humanoids from the deep in this movie weren't all rapey. So that's something.